Sometimes even good people can make a mistake. And when it happens, it's one of the most intense and emotional experiences of your life. It could be a DUI, or maybe you were in the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time. Or perhaps you just did something stupid at the spur of the moment without even thinking, and now you're in trouble with the law. Well, you need experienced legal help right away so you don't become a victim of the criminal justice system. Even good people can make a mistake, and if you, a friend, or a loved one has been accused of a crime, don't make another mistake by hiring the wrong attorney for the kind of help you need. You need to visit toddjohnslaw.com. That's toddjohnslaw.com, and then call Attorney Todd Johns today. Attorney Todd Johns has decades of experience helping good people like you who have made mistakes or bad decisions and will stand by you every step of the way. toddjohnslaw.com.
All right. Hello. Welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I am your host, Mr. Bill Rader, and joining me, my co-host who joins me each and every week, Mr. Sean Kane. Sean, what's going on, buddy?
Billy Raids, how you doing today, pal?
I'm doing pretty good. We got a great guest this week. Former California State Assemblyman Mike Gatto joins us with one of the most interesting stories I think we have had here on this program, and we're happy to welcome him to That's Enough Out of You. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Mike, why don't you start off by give us a little background on yourself and tell us about some of your work in California.
Sure. So I think my political career is pretty easy to remember. I was the California State Representative for Hollywood for many years. I got elected to the California legislature in a district that includes parts of the city of Los Angeles, including, like I said, Hollywood and some neighborhoods that are well known across the globe, like the Hollywood Hills and Silver Lake, and also the cities of Glendale and Burbank, 500,000 Californians. I served 4 terms in the California legislature. I've worked on a variety of different things, everything from trying to repair the state's notoriously bad finances to bringing back classic license plates for classic cars. So it was a whirlwind in the legislature. I stay involved in politics quite a bit right now. I'm on national television a couple times a week, given the California perspective on things. And there's so much to talk about, and I'm just really happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Well, Mike, let's start. One of the things in your political career, let's talk about the legislation you were involved in with the homeless.
Yeah, so great question. So California has a very bad problem with homelessness. A lot of people will try to blame it on the weather. They will say, well, California's got a big homeless problem because the weather's so nice. Well, there's lots of places around the United States where the weather's very nice, or where you can sleep outside 300 days a year. So I'm not sure that that's the biggest factor. So what I did in 2019 is I proposed a statewide ballot measure. California is one of 25 states that allows the public to vote on legislation. So I proposed a ballot measure that would have Californians weigh in on the homelessness crisis. We went in for a signature gathering on we were cleared for signature gathering on March 15, 2020. As those of you remember that date, that's the day that the world shut down for COVID. So we couldn't gather signatures. Yeah. But my principle was simple. I wanted the state to treat homelessness as to treat certain crimes that homeless commit as a cry for help. First of all, Bill, Sean, if you guys were, out in public fornicating, which everybody in Los Angeles, many people in New York have seen many, many times, you'd be arrested and probably given mental health resources, and you'd be forced to, address these things. If you were driving on the street and you threw like a carton of donuts out the window, you'd probably be cited and there would be some type of consequences for littering the streets. I believe that with the homeless, if we treat some of these crimes as a cry for help and we use the opportunity to engage them and get them into the right resources, we can actually make a dent in the problem.
Interesting. So give us a little insight, Mike, into, some of your time in the politics there and like policy fights and some of your high profile legislation. Give us a little insight into California's state politics.
Sure. So, California is essentially a one-party state, but I tried not to approach things that way. I tried to approach things with just remembering that everybody who got elected represents 500,000, or in the state Senate case, 1 million Californians. That's the size of our districts. And that everybody was there, hopefully, to try to accomplish something. What I like to do is give your viewers some type of insight into what things are really like. One of the things that I tell people to understand with politics is I want everybody right now who's watching this to think about the number one issue that they believe has to be addressed in politics. Could be something personal to you. It could be something that you just think is a burning crisis. And then you imagine that you've worked on it for 10 years. And for all the first 9 years, the proposal was killed because of special interests or something like that.
Mm.
And in your 10th year, you finally have the bill ready to go to the finish line. And you're going to solve a problem that you think is really important. For example, I have a buddy who ran for office, and he had a tragedy in his family where a very close family member of his was killed in a horrible highway accident that could have been prevented. So he ran for the legislature to try to address highway safety. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, you think about what matters the most to you. And you imagine that you're in year 10 and your legislation is coming up before a vote by, Mr. Smith. Chairman Smith is going to decide the fate of your bill. Now, Chairman Smith has got a bill that's coming before you that same day. That's really stupid. I mean, this is like one of the stupidest things you've ever seen in your life. What do? Do you vote yes on his bill? This is what it's like to be a lawmaker, folks. It is by definition a give and take. If you believe you're there to do good, you've got to learn how to work within the system, and you've got to compromise.
And sometimes those things are in the same bill, right, Mike? I mean, sometimes it's right.
Sometimes in the same bill.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mike, speaking of personal tragedy, I mean, you suffered one certainly, while you were serving, and you want to talk a little bit about that? I know you have quite a story.
Sure. So I had something happen to me. My family had something happen to it that, I think gave me unique perspective on many of the issues that legislatures vote on. It certainly put a personal angle to so many things that legislatures vote on all the time. So when I was at sort of the peak of my power, I was chair of Appropriations, arguably the most powerful elected official in the state at the time. My father was killed in a super, super high profile home invasion robbery. This happened on 11/12/13, date that's easy for me to remember and easy for others to remember. The crime is still unsolved. 12 years later, it's completely unsolved. We have some leads, we have some profiles, but we really just don't have, obviously we don't have a suspect. The case, as happens in Los Angeles and in Hollywood, it rapidly kind of took on, one of those things like those Los Angeles cases that go unsolved, right? Like for the longest time, we had the Night Stalker, we had OJ, we had the Manson killings. Like it's been on Dateline NBC, it's been on, Fox. It's regularly something that's in the news because of the nature of this crime and how, my father was a beloved retired teacher. He was 78 years old. He was an Army veteran. He was somebody who was just so loved by the community. And listen, nobody deserves getting murdered, but my father really didn't deserve to get murdered, right? He's the last person you would think of would get killed in this fashion. And so it's really hard, right? Because, when you're legislating, the veterans always tell you, don't let your personal experiences cloud your judgment. They say anecdotes make bad law. Anecdotal evidence makes bad law. That's the phrase, right? But it was very hard during my tenure in the legislature after my father got killed, not to, when there was a bill on DNA collection or a bill on like resentencing people who've been in prison for 30 years or a bill on, letting people out of jail early or whatever. It was very hard not to personalize it and not to have my experience with the justice system affect how I process the legislation.
And you wrote a book about your experience there as well, right?
I did. I wrote a book about the experience that for a couple of weeks actually knocked Governor DeSantis's book off the charts, which is just kind of cool. And I tried to tell the story of my father's experience and his life from the perspective of all of the families of crime victims who do not have this type of interest in their case and do not have the platform that I've been blessed to have. There's something people out there really don't know, I've found, is that roughly 50%, and in some jurisdictions like Los Angeles, it's sometimes closer to 60% of murders go unsolved. In my dad's case, it has a lot of interest, and it was front page of newspapers, national TV, all that stuff. And I'm lucky enough to have a platform. I'm lucky enough to be here with you, talking about this. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of victims out there, victims' families that just toil in obscurity. They're waiting for answers just like I am. And I wanted to make or help people who thankfully don't ever go through something like this to kind of understand what those families are going through. It's a lot of anxiety and a lot of agony, a lot of false leads, a lot of this, a lot of that. And so it's been an experience.
Mike, is the investigation, is it still relatively active, or is it kind of just a cold case now, or is there any like new evidence that's come out recently?
Yeah, I mean, I always forget the definition of a cold case. I think it's like, 3 years have passed and like,
Yeah.
But the police reassure me that they are actively investigating it, or they're still, but I mean, after 12 years, it's not like the hotline is buzzing with leads, every couple of weeks, like in the first weeks after.
Sure.
The interesting stuff is that, I keep learning stuff about the case. Every time I speak with the detectives, I learn a new tidbit that I sort of process, but they waited about 10 years to tell me that my dad fought back, which was, mind blowing to me. But it's just little stuff like that have kind of helped me try to figure out what happened. And, and I talk about that in the book, how it's, it's a mystery. It's just something that it's very hard for the mind to work its way around. And, I want justice. I also want answers.
Sure.
Was there other like home invasions in the neighborhood, in the area, or is this just like a one-off?
This was the only murder in my dad's neighborhood for the entire year. And you think about how extraordinary that is for Los Angeles. The only murder the entire year.
Wow.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, go ahead, Billy. Go ahead.
Sean, you go. I was just going to ask you what you wanted to go to next.
Well, I think, you know what, I think we should go to national politics, Mike, because it's so right now it's so volatile, and I heard you say several times, in different interviews I've seen you do that, you try to talk to both sides. You try to talk to even the extremists on both sides and just try to get some kind of, I don't know if the right word, but some kind of just, get it back to normal, because this is just craziness the last 5 years, even maybe last 10 years. Let's talk about that a little bit. How do you deal with both sides? Like, how do you talk to extremists?
Well, I'll tell you one thing to start it off with, and I'll start with a conspiracy theory. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I do think that two conspiracy theories that will prove true 10 years from now. One will be that a portion, not all, but a portion of the drugs that are on our streets have been put by foreign intelligence agencies. And I also think that a portion, not all, but some of the infighting that is caused in our country is caused by foreign intelligence. And you think about it and it's like, oh, that's crazy. But, we do it, right? I mean, people have heard of the Arab Spring. I mean, we were going into these countries where we wanted regime change.
We do it quite a bit.
We were, telling people like, be mad about this, go in the streets, spread on social, right? I mean, so we do it all around the globe. We always have, and people are doing it to us too. Now, I say that because I'm consciously trying to appeal to most Americans' sense of indignance, which is like, hey, are we kind of being forced to hate our brothers and sisters? Is that something that is, I mean, look, we all have a right to have different opinions. We all believe really passionately, but does it have to be this bad, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, Bill Maher had Marjorie Taylor Greene on his show yesterday, and he tweeted something that I really do believe, which is if you at least talk with somebody, even somebody who, people have very strong feelings about, you might agree with them on 25% of the stuff. You might at least realize that they're human. You might not attribute bad motives to them. You might at least think of them as halfway decent human beings, right? I had this really crazy tweet battle with Ben Shapiro once. Like, we went at it. Like, it was like, blah, 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 trying to insult each other and like that. And finally, at the end of it, he invited me on his show. And we left the show like, I would say buddies, but like wow, like, hey, you're a decent guy and you seem like you care about stuff. And like, yeah, and here's some stuff we agree on. And, and so if you can find common ground, if a Hollywood Democrat can find common ground with, Republicans, right? And, a Florida Republican, then I think there's hope for the country. And so, yeah, I really, really believe that you got to talk to people. That's the most basic thing.
Me and Bill talk all the time that we feel that, a lot of people that are in the middle, even if you go middle left, middle right, they kind of agree with just about everything. It's the extremists that are so loud. And the thing is, like, the extremists on both sides, the left and the right. But to me, the Trump with Trump, it's like his side. Like, once you go down that road and you're like behind Trump 100%, it's like it's hard to talk to somebody like that. It's hard. How do you reach somebody like that who whatever the guy says they're going to go along with, even if he changes his mind 10 minutes later, they're going to change their mind. So how do you do that?
That part has been the most frustrating for me too, because, it's like my party right or wrong, my guy right or wrong. Like, you could go to somebody and you could say, do you believe in, whatever tariffs? And, a diehard, 50 Republican will say, no, I hate him, free trade, blah, blah, blah. But then if Trump speaks up for him, they'll be like, oh my God, tariffs are great. Right. And that type of thinking, it's got to go, folks. I mean, it's got to go, because nothing is more charming or nothing is more moral and ethical than to readily admit when you're wrong. Right. And so, like, if you say, like, I voted for Trump, but I think he's wrong on tariffs, like, that's refreshing. Like, I mean, that's how life should be, right? You can't possibly agree with another human being on everything. You're not identical twins, right? And yeah, that type of thinking drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And you look at Kennedy, right, after the Bay of Pigs, right? His approval rating skyrocketed after the Bay of Pigs because he went on TV and said,
he took the blame.
I was wrong. He took the blame. He said I screwed up. And I love that type of politics. I hate the type of politics where
that's because he was a leader. And that's what I think we lack right now. We lack that leadership that Kennedy had. But go ahead, Billy. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, it's just, Mike, you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we've seen what's happened with her recently, where just because of a strong opinion that she had, Trump has turned against her now and is calling her a traitor, and now she's resigning. And, I don't have much empathy for Marjorie Taylor Greene, but, you look at MAGA and the way that they would, they've supported her, and she's basically been Trump's right hand through a lot of this, and now she's getting death threats from them. I mean, I've never in my lifetime seen anything like this. It's, I don't think any of us have. It's just amazing the blind loyalty that this group of people has for this man who really doesn't stand for anything.
No, he has no ideology.
Yeah. And the question that I have, and this is something that I think will determine the fate of our country, and I don't think that's hyperbole, is this a phenomenon that's unique to Trump and perhaps to this 8-year period in American history, a 12-year period in American history? Or does this continue once he's gone? Right. So let's say Vance becomes president, or let's say, Rubio becomes president. Does that type of blind loyalty continue? And if it does, folks, then we're really, you could argue that that's the beginning of the end for our country, right? Because you just can't live like that. You can't live where there's no morality, there's no sense of right and wrong, there's no, well, I think like he screwed up on this issue, and yeah, I don't support him on that issue. I mean, that's how life was for the first 200 something odd years of our country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm, I was a registered Republican at 18. I registered as a Republican. I voted Republican for most of the early part of my life. And even though my views started to change, I kind of, I stayed as a Republican until he came along. And then that's when I realized, listen, I don't have anything in common with the Republican Party anymore. If they're going to support this guy, if this is going to be their nominee for president, this is not my party anymore. And I left the Republican Party. And my view has always been, I vote for the the agenda. I vote for the ideas. I vote for, the man and not the party. But that seems to be gone now. And, I don't know if we're ever going to get that back. It just doesn't seem like there is a way to bring bipartisanship and, a way to bring people together because even if you have somebody who is sort of a centrist, someone who can deal with both sides and appeals to a majority of people, as Sean said before, it's those extreme voices, those extreme people that are out there that will never let that seeming like will never let that happen again. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, so it's interesting because a good friend of mine described it as the entire country has and I never know how to pronounce this word correctly, if it's sociopathy or sociopathy, but the entire country seems to be suffering from borderline personality disorder. What I mean by that, right, is that this black and white thinking that somebody is all good or all bad, and half the country seems to think Trump is all good and whatever he does is correct and whatever the other side does is incorrect. Even if you on Tuesday you said, do you believe in X? And then a Democrat, the next day said, hey, I'm going to fight for X. It was like, blah, 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 that's horrible, right? And like that type of thinking, I mean, you were talking, Bill, that type of thinking is just a recipe for disaster. I mean, this guy is all knowing and he's all good. I mean, that's the type of fealty that we typically reserve for like Roman emperors and stuff like that, not presidents.
Exactly.
Dictators, yeah.
It's really disturbing to see here.
Well, and Mike, you mentioned something. You said that half the country, thinks he can do no wrong. It's really not half the country. If you look at his approval rating, it's in the toilet. It's what Sean and I have talked about many times is how do we get the people that don't vote? How do we get those people to realize that this is we're in this spot because a lot of people that would ordinarily or would probably vote Democrat just didn't vote. Yeah. And I don't know what did you do during your time in politics to I've said so many times that every state needs a Stacey Abrams. She went out in the 2020 election in the state of Georgia. She went door to door. She had a team of people that went door to door and went to the people, to the neighborhoods, people that just, don't have any interest in politics and don't care and don't vote. And she said, look, this is why it's important for you, for right now, for your future, that you do vote. And I think, like I said, every state, and she was successful. I really think every state needs somebody like that. What did you do, Mike, during your time in politics and maybe you continue doing it now to do that?
Great question, Bill. Great question. And one that I think is really important. So what I noticed is in my first year in office, first 6 months in office, my staff would send me to the same events. Like, my typical calendar, just for people who don't know, is, the legislature is in session in California when your kids are in school. So pretty much Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday, I'd be up in the Capitol, but then I'd come back on the weekends, often for 2-3 days to my home, to the district. And, my job would be then to interact with my 500,000 constituents and also people in the state who just want something from the legislature. And I started to notice in my first 6 months in office that my staff was sending me to the same events. I would go talk to the Chamber of Commerce and there would be, like the local chamber, nothing wrong with that, but there'd be the same 40 people who then would be at the next event, which would be like, the blah, 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 big charity. And so I started to tell my staff, no, I'm not going to go to those events. I want you to send me to the car clubs and to the PTAs and to the places where they've never seen a politician. You go to the chamber, it's the same 8 politicians giving the same speech, glad handing the same 40 people, shaking the same hands, saying the same thing. And I said, I'm not going to events like that anymore. I want you to send me to places where they've never seen a politician and they might never again. And I would show up to these things. I would show up to like an art walk, or I would show up to like a car club, and these guys would look at me like, what are you doing here? Like, it's so cool to see, like, oh my God, an elected official like came and it's like, yeah, like what's on, and that's where you talk to regular people who are struggling to make ends meet, people who really know what's going on in Main Street. And they were so happy to see an elected official actually give a damn. And a lot of them got engaged. A lot of them like started to email me and share their thoughts on bills and share their thoughts on legislation. And I believe by the time I left office, the speaker told me, well, they keep stats and they keep all this stuff, that my district had the most emails from any district in the state of California. So I would get about 58,000 emails a year, which means that over 1 out of 10 of my constituents would send me an email in a year. And that was such an honor to me. Like, it was like, like people are actually sharing their views with me because they think I'm accessible and they think that I'll respond. And I thought that was really cool.
That's great. Yeah. And I just, I wish we would see more of that. I wish, that more
definitely.
politicians would do that. Particularly, like I said, in some of these neighborhoods where people just are, they just feel like, hey, my voice doesn't matter, or I work 2 jobs, I don't have time to go vote,
Yes.
or, whatever the case may be,
Yes.
and make them understand just how important it is. You may only get 1 vote, but it's important, and you need
Correct.
to.
And that mom who works 2 jobs, she might be at a PTA mixer. And if you can show up there, at least she feels like she knows who you are. She assigns a name to the face on the ballot. She can tell you what she wants. You can give her a card. She feels like she's actually got some connection. Whereas if you're showing up to the same stinking event and it's the same 40 people, it's a false reality. A politician will not have a true sense of what's going on in the economy or their community if they just show up to those same
Right.
events.
And how much time, Mike, did you have to spend, fundraising rather than doing those things?
Fundraising when you're running for office is brutal. Once you're in office and, if you have a safe seat, it's not that bad. But no, the fundraising, I mean, gosh, when I was running for office in campaign season, it was sometimes 7 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's,
Wow.
it's being in politics is an 18-hour day job, but fundraising is an awful big chunk of that.
And I can't even imagine a Democrat in a red state having to do
Sure.
that. So it must just be all consuming.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, Mike, what do you think the Democrats have to do to kind of turn the tide? And do you see a candidate out there that could, that people are looking for in the Democratic Party? And what's your opinion of the governor, Gavin Newsom?
So I have 2 answers to your first question, and then I'll answer your second. So
Okay.
what do Democrats have to do? 2 things, very simple. You have to be authentic. You got to be your real self. You look at the people who inspired movements in recent memory, 2016, it was Bernie and Trump, totally different politics. But what do they have in common? They're authentic. Where does that come from? And you know a little bit about this, right? American trust in government. It was pretty good through the 50s. Then JFK was assassinated. Boom. RFK was assassinated. Boom. MLK, so on and so forth. Vietnam, Watergate, right?
Mhm.
I'm even off screen. It's so low, right? Then you have
Yeah.
Iran Contra and,
Yeah.
all this stuff, right? So people somehow, our politics became, we're going to trust people who are authentic. Nowadays, you can't even trust a video clip if it's AI, right? Like, but if somebody is talking and they kind of say what's ever on their mind, the public trusts them. And that's Bernie and that's Trump. Okay. So we need people who are more authentic and not so caught up with like the word salads. I really think that's a criticism we got to take to heart. The second thing that we got to do is we got to stop reacting to Trump. I mean, like, the example that I give people is, if you're on the schoolyard and a bully comes up to you and says, hey, it's the guy who sleeps with goats. If your reaction is, I don't sleep with goats. I'm totally happy. Like, I actually sleep with a dog, and like, I don't even live by a goat. Like, you've already lost. I mean, honestly, you've lost. If that's your reaction, you've lost. The other example that's more now, right, is when Trump went out there and deployed the National Guard into cities. They were doing 2 things. They were helping with a perception of public safety, plus in some cases, they were just picking up litter. Democrats reacted by saying, oh, everything Trump does is bad. And this is him trying to make himself a king. And this is probably unconstitutional. And yeah, while those things are probably true or more true than not, what I would remind my fellow Democratic mayors is nothing would have stopped you from being this proactive in your cities. People don't feel safe. Democrats, Republicans, especially in our inner cities, people do feel like there is too much litter, too much graffiti. Yes, I know there's budgetary constraints, everything like that, but inspire people. Go out there, create a volunteer army of people who spray on graffiti. Go out there and say you're starting a litter pickup effort and inspire people. Go to churches. Say that you're going to take a few cops out of their desks and out of the cars and have them walk the beat again. Nothing stops us from grabbing an issue by the horns and saying, this is something I'm going to do. Nothing stops a Democrat in the House from putting forth a comprehensive immigration bill. Like, take control of the narrative. Stop reacting to Trump. You lose if you're just reacting. So those are my two suggestions. In terms of who's doing that for 2028, I wish I could report to you that I see somebody who is super authentic, who's got their own ideas. I know Gavin Newsom very well. Great guy, brilliant politician. He's actually, in person, as charismatic as he is to the camera, he's even more charismatic in person. Like, he's a guy you really want to hang out with when you spend some time with him, as I have. I would still tell him, hey, work on being perceived as more authentic. And number two, don't just react to Trump. It's great you did this redistricting thing, but that was a reaction to Trump. It's great that you've done all these other things. Those are reactions to Trump. You know, the memeing on social media, out-Trumping Trump, I don't like it. You know, I think the person who wins in 2028 will be someone who's authentic and somebody who drives a narrative with their own really cool ideas. And I mean, look, Dami won in New York, arguably because he was those two things.
Sure.
Right? Put out all what you say about his politics. They're probably too extreme for everybody on this podcast today. But he was super authentic, and he had his own ideas that were like driving the narrative. And those two things is the path for victory.
Good points. Good points.
Now Trump loves him. But the problem.
So weird.
Hey, Sean, before we move on, I just want to mention our sponsor, one of our sponsors, DK's Corner, located in Jessup, Pennsylvania. Right on Cherry Street, 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania. Sean, I had a cheesesteak, and I know the ads always mention the cheesesteaks, and we've had a few listeners comment on that. I actually just had one yesterday, and I thought
you were on a diet.
I am. Well, the thing is, at work now, we've been ordering from DK's, and I keep smelling, everybody's ordering these cheesesteaks, and I keep smelling them. So yesterday fantastic. I broke down, and I had to have one.
It's all right.
It's just, I'll tell you what, Sean, just delish. I love DK's Corner cheesesteaks. Dave makes everything himself there. Everything is so fresh. All the food he makes is just incredibly delicious. It's such a really a great menu too. I mean, it
is, Bill. He gets really creative with a lot of the specials he has.
Yeah.
He has really good stuff, and you know, his pizza's fantastic, but he always has incredible specials, Bill.
And there's always different things there that, you always have to make sure you check, look on Facebook, DK's Corner on Facebook, because he's always got different specials, different things. He's
constantly changing the menu. Constantly.
And that's what, keeps it fresh, keeps everything good. So he has breakfast. He has these breakfast bowls in the morning. They're delicious. Everything, like I said, everything he makes is great. He's got kind of a unique cooler in there with different sodas and stuff like that, different drinks. So make sure you call or stop by in Jessup. Again, it's 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania. If you're local here in Northeast Pennsylvania, make sure that you stop by and check out DK's Corner. Again, just delicious food, Sean. I know you order from there a lot too.
I order constantly from there, Bill, and so many times that I sent people there. My brother went there, loved it. I had other people. Nathan loves it there. It's just a great place. Sometimes they take it out. Sometimes I even sit there. It's really comfortable. But we get so many people, Bill, listeners and stuff that said, "Oh, I went to DK's and it was great." I can't tell you how many people. We just had a question episode where people were talking about it. It's just unbelievable place. So definitely check that out.
All right, definitely check out DK's Corner. Go to Facebook, look up DK's Corner. Again, he's located at 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania. DK's Corner. We will be right back. Hey, Sean. Want to make sure that everybody knows about our Patreon. I know we mention it every once in a while on the show, but really important that people check out our Patreon. If you go to Patreon and search for That's Enough Out of You, or just click on the link in the description, you'll find we do an extra episode every week called the Speakeasy, and it's really usually just Sean and I kind of talking about the day's events, current events, and things like that. But a lot of exciting things. I mean, I know, Sean, you're constantly putting articles up there on our Patreon.
Yeah, and sometimes, Bill, we do bring on special guests. We had Dave Whelan on, we had Scranton Dave, and every now and then we bring Patreon members on. We've had different members, Scott Alfieri, Michael Pilch, Dan Hankey was on. So, there's an opportunity there. If you want to come on the show with us, So there's a lot of things we're doing. Like you mentioned, Bill, the articles. I put articles up on a free site, but I also put articles on Patreon that's not available on the free site. We have a lot of times I put up future intel about guests that we have coming up and stuff that we have coming up on the podcast. And we created a great community there, Bill. There's a lot of chat goes on there. There's a community chat and a lot of the comments back and forth. Just the Patreon members always have great insight. So it's a community, Bill, and it's an opportunity for people to join for a really good price, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat it. You can certainly become a free member if you want to. There's also tiered levels with subscription amounts, and just for $1 that gets you everything. I mean, the $1 gets you everything, including our weekly show. There's other tiers. I think, Sean, what is there? A $3 tier?
$3, a $5, a $10. I mean, and there's a $50 if people could afford to give $50.
Yeah, I mean, totally up to you. Once you join, you can make that decision, and certainly, there's no commitment. I mean, you could join for a month or 2 months or whatever you want, and then you can switch your subscription around. Totally up to you. I mean, that's people love Patreon for that reason. It really is. It makes it easy. It's kind of however you want to do it, however you want to join, and we certainly appreciate anybody who joins our Patreon and supports the show, because we definitely Sean, we're not getting rich off of this podcast, that's for sure, but we definitely appreciate any support that we get from our listeners.
And we also have our merchandise store. If people want to check out, we have the shirt that I have on now. We have mugs up there. We have cups, hats, anything you can do to help the podcast grow. We also have a bookshop up there, Bill, where all the authors that we have on our podcast, we have their books up, and it supports local bookstores, Bill. The money goes to local bookstores, a little bit to us, and then to the publisher and to the author. So it's a real good opportunity instead of buying Amazon and making
supporting billionaires.
Right, sure. There's an opportunity. And as far as Patreon, one last thing, Bill, if you want to join as a free member, we do put some stuff up there for the free members, and then if you like it and you want to upgrade, you can do that.
Absolutely. So definitely check out our Patreon. Like I said, there's a link in the description to our Patreon, or you can just go to Patreon and search for That's Enough Out of You, look for our logo, and just fill in the information and you can join. All right. That's it, Sean. We appreciate all of our Patreon members, and we hope that you guys will consider checking it out if you haven't joined. Thank you.
Buddy.
The problem is, Mike, it's almost impossible not to react to him, because he's 24/7. Mainstream media covers him 24/7. There is literally no break. Just when you think things are starting to maybe calm down a little bit, he does something so outrageous, and immediately it's 24/7 coverage of every little thing that not only he did, but how people react to him and how people react to the people that reacted to him. And then you got to bring on a panel to talk about it. So there is never a break. There's never a time where there's not something to react to. Right.
Bill, I'm going to go back to dating advice now and say the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, right? And like if you're in high school and your ex is like, oh my God, she said this about you, blah, 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 and you're like, oh, blah, 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 but it's like, I don't care about her, like there are some politicians that, like, when Trump does something and they're asked at a news conference, they say, I mean, that's the federal government, that doesn't affect what we're doing here in the city, and I don't really care about it, right? That is a better answer. That takes the wind out of his sails, and we've got to get better at doing it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Mike, there's two things I think for me that Trump is doing. There's a lot of things, but there's two specifically that I don't see how anybody could defend his position on. And one is the Epstein files, and two is the way he's using ICE and just people getting detained, citizens are getting detained. There's no due process in a lot of these cases, and you see these extreme videos that people are putting out. And we know we got a problem with the immigration system, but his solution to that problem, he's making things much worse than it was before. What do you think we can do with the immigration system and the problem that we have?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you start by, I think changing the rhetoric is so important. People come to this
Yeah.
country because they want to work hard. One of the things that I was really, really upset with when Donald Trump said all this stuff, disparaging immigrants. I mean, the fact of the matter is that people who have the wherewithal and the motivation and the ambition to get up and to leave behind their family. You know
Hmm.
how hard it must be to
Yeah.
leave behind your family and your loved one and the places that are dear to you, and to travel all sorts of, hundreds, thousands of miles to come to a new country to work your ass off. That is the immigrant that I know. And yes, we can't take in everybody. Yes, our borders cannot be open. I agree. I agree with all that stuff. That all makes sense. But we got to stop disparaging immigrants. And we also have to, you know, if you look at the amount of money that he is spending on ICE, and you just spent a portion of that on like putting in place sensible checks and reforming the
Hmm.
system and making and a portion of the energy that the national mindset is spending on this, and you put that into convincing Congress to actually do something about immigration, we probably would have a solution that was akin to the one that Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan put out during their time, which was a great example of how you can do this.
Hmm.
The second thing that I think is important to keep in mind, you talked about like things that he does that can't be defended. I mean, there's a few things on that list, besides just ICE. But yeah, I
Sure.
mean, those are issues that I like to think we could box him in a corner on, and maybe get some of even his reasonable followers to say like, hey, this is not right, and let's push other elected officials to try to moderate these positions a little bit.
Yeah, because the truth is, I mean, we're all immigrants. This is a country of immigrants. And the thing is, if you have somebody here, and even if they're undocumented, they've been working, they've been productive for 20 years, no criminal record. I mean, to me, you got to find that person a path to citizenship.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely.
reasonable. Like you said, you got to relocate this money, reallocate it a different way. So much money is being spent on ICE, and the concern is that, who are they hiring? Because that's a major concern right now. They're running around with masks. They're not identifying themselves. I mean, who the hell are these people? I mean, what is the criteria for getting into ICE right now? Because it seems to me that it's been extremely lowered.
Well, I mean, you look at like the danger of having masked people who don't have to identify themselves, showing up in public with a gun and taking somebody in a car. I mean, that's a step away from chaos if that's the type of thing that you allow to happen. Because I mean, I don't think, just like during COVID when people said, gee, if we're allowing people to wear masks and sunglasses plus head coverings, like it's like people are going to start realizing that this is a way to do stuff and not be on camera. I mean, if you can just show up in public with a gun and a mask and say, get in the car, I mean, how does that person know that they're being kidnapped, or how does that person know that they're genuinely, dealing with a representative of the US government?
Right.
And then we're hearing horror stories about these people who are being deported, these prisons that they're in. Um, and what, I mean, what do we do? I'm,
Well, I mean, that's not us, right? We have to have a conversation about American values. John McCain, who had every right to be bitter after being held in horribly inhumane conditions uh, during the Vietnam War, he was the first person to speak up whenever the United States would do something that started to look like that. And he's like, look, this is not us. These are not our values. This is just not something we do.
right,
I can understand if El Salvador wants to put their most horrific gang members who have committed horrific crimes, who have tortured people. Okay, I can understand if they should be at maximum security prisons without creature comforts. But when you take somebody who's been here and use their crime is overstaying a visa, and you put them in the same prison, that's not American values, folks.
right,
That's just
No.
not something we should be doing. And we
right.
lose our authority with the rest of the world, and we lose a little bit of our hearts if we allow that to happen.
Yeah. But
Go
go ahead,
ahead.
Sean.
Well, I was just going to say, like, one of the main problems is, the way ICE is attacking this thing. They're not going after gang members. They're not going into communities that we know are controlled by gangs. They're going into attacking working people. They're going into farms. They're going into businesses, And this is not what he promised when he said he was going to do this, because he said he was going to do it, but he said he was going to go after people with criminal records. And if you look at the numbers, the people that are being detained, it's a very low percentage of them that actually have criminal records.
Yeah. And I think that might be the key to to understanding the whole thing, is a lot of people assume that he probably was inflating how many immigrants have criminal records. And at some point he runs out of numbers, and it's like, well, got to justify the spending, got to justify the raids.
Right.
And so then what are you doing? You're going into a car wash and there's some guy there who, is busting his behind, or you're going into a hotel and there's a woman changing sheets, and you're all of a sudden making her life miserable. There's got to be a better way. There has got to be a better way. There has got to be a better way.
Yeah. Mike, one thing I want to go back to, talking about Gavin Newsom, and for sure I would say 95% he's going to run for president in 2028. One thing that the right is going to bring up about Gavin Newsom is this perception that there's a mass exodus from California. Tell me about that. What do you see? What are the real numbers?
Yeah, well, look, this is something that I got to be honest on, and this is where perhaps I will fall in the category that I said earlier, which is I have to identify where my party is wrong or our party is wrong. California is a tough place to do business in. It's a hard place to buy a house. It's a place that has frustrated a lot of people lately, and we do have a net outflow. California, for the first time in history, since statehood, lost population, and we're losing, obviously what matters when you lose population is you lose congressional seats and you lose electoral college votes. And we lost one of each, at the last census. It is projected that at the next census, we will lose five congressional seats, 5 electoral votes. So this is real. There's relative growth happening in other parts of the country, and there's relative net loss happening in California, or absolute net loss happening in California. Now, why is that? Some of it is just cost. It's very, very expensive to raise kids here, to buy a house, and to try to have your piece of the American dream. We got to address that. Democrats, Republicans, we got to address it. Secondly, part of it is, we have not been great in a lot of our cities with addressing things like homelessness and everything like that. I can tell you a story in my own life that I think, paints a fairly decent picture of it. There's a house that we had, as pretty modest house in a nice neighborhood that my wife and I had, and it's in the Hollywood Hills. And I don't want to brag or sound too LA, but Brad Pitt lived right down the street. I would walk by he actually owned a bunch of houses on a street that was way nicer than mine. But I would literally walk by his compounds on the way to the grocery store.
Wow.
And obviously paid taxes, the whole 9 yards, all that stuff. Now, my daughters, I would take them to ride bikes up in a little park, and I taught them how to ride, everything like that. And we were going for our first street bike ride. This is a big momentous day. I was going to take them for donuts. We ride our bikes to the donut place, and they're crunching something with their tires, and I look down, and it's a whole bunch of drug needles.
Oh.
And it's like, you have this epiphany, Brad Pitt lives here,
right,
in a $25 million house. Now, by the way, my house, not even a tenth of that. Okay. But the point is, it's a really nice neighborhood. People pay a lot of taxes. People, think it's this glamorous area. And yet you've got these really, really bad problems that should be solvable. And, I think you tell a young person, someone who's 25, okay, you're going to save up and save up and save up. And the person's like, how can I ever afford a house in that neighborhood? And when I get there will be drug needles underneath my daughter's wheels, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what's causing some of the California exodus.
But are any of these things, from your perspective, are these things directly a result of Newsom's policies? Do you think that there are things that he's doing to bring people back or to keep people?
Well, I will say the magical word here, which we talked about with JFK, and that's accountability. Democrats, including me, we have been in power in California for a long time. It's been since 1994 that Republicans, 1994 since they held the legislature, and then actually my tenure, where I served with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was
going to ask you about that as well, yeah.
The governor's mansion. But by and large, Democrats have been in power in California for a long time, all levels of government, and so yeah, we own this. We own this, and we've got to take accountability. I can't say that it's all us and it's directly our policies, but I can say that we definitely have a role in it. And are there things we could do better? Yes. I wouldn't have proposed that homelessness measure if I didn't think that.
Right.
I think right now there's really two possibilities. When somebody, is homeless and what they call acute homelessness, where they're doing quality of life crimes and, pushing the mothers out of the park because they're doing bad things. There's really only two possibilities that society can do. We can ignore them, which I submit is not humane for the person who's suffering. And it's also not humane for the mother who wants to use the park. Or we could arrest them and put them in state prison for 5 years. That's also not ideal. Putting them in state prison, great cost. They're probably learning how to commit more crime. Right. There's got to be a third way. And my proposal was a third way. Is like you do address the issues that are being caused, but then you use it as a way to get somebody help. You do make an arrest if somebody is threatening a mom at a park, but you say, hey, like, what ails this person? What does this person need? And if it's mental health services, you get them in it. If it's drug rehab, you get them in it. If it's money, you find a way to connect them with government programs. I mean, but these are things that I think we could do better, and we've got to do better to save our cities and our great states.
Yeah, 100%.
Mike, talk to us about Schwarzenegger. I mean, here you have this, bigger than life personality. How did you end up? Did you have a lot of dealings with him? How did that work out? Like, just talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Schwarzenegger and I overlapped during our first year in the legislature, my first year in the legislature only. So, but he, he's not as confident or as blustery behind the scenes as he projects, and I think that you could describe. It was really interesting. I once met Pervez Musharraf, the dictator of Pakistan, and I had the same impression of him. It's like, he was very like puffing up his chest, wearing the medals, all that stuff. And then behind closed doors, it's like, pretty like normal average person who doesn't really have the bluster. I think Arnold was the same way, but he was a character, and I'll tell you, he cared about the state. He's somebody who I think Democrats could work for. He cared deeply about the environment. Some of the environmental laws that we hold most cherished in California were Governor Schwarzenegger ideas. And it's like, when people say, can the parties ever go back to that? I say, look, this wasn't that long ago. I mean, this was not even 20 years ago. This was 15 years ago. We had people working together here in California that I think had hearts in the right places. And like, isn't that something we should all go for? Yeah, of course. I mean, and so I do think there's hope. I do think things move in cycles, and I hope we can return to some type of thing where we have like we have Republicans like Arnold Schwarzenegger in office.
And he was, he's been one of the most outspoken people against Trump.
Yep.
But you go back to what you said. I mean, just civility amongst these people. There's that famous video of John McCain talking to that woman who said, who said that Barack Obama is, he wasn't even born in this country. He's not a real American. He said, no, he is an American, and he's he just has different ideas than I do. He said, but he's a good man. He's a family man, and we just think differently. We just don't hear that anymore. It's so rare. And I voted for John McCain. I mean, that's the kind. I mean, that's the kind of man that I feel should represent our country as president. And where's the next guy that we're going to see that? I just don't.
And Bill, the sad thing, right? It's not just that it's not there anymore, right? It's that it's mocked. I mean,
sure.
You look at like the footage last week where you had Democrats and Republicans, and I know that the personalities cause reactions in people, but Democrats and Republicans together at Dick Cheney's funeral, and people were like, oh, it's this and that, it's the uniparty. It's like, no, these are people who were very much warriors for their own party and their ideas. But these are people who've been in government for a long, long time, and they're being civil at a funeral, for God's sakes. I mean, like,
right.
That is something that that's what normal people do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but like when I go to a funeral, I'm not talking politics, and I'm not like, oh, get away from me. Like, no, it's a funeral, guys. Like you're civil, right? And
right, sure.
But this was mocked, right, by some people, and it's like, geez, guys, I mean, what's wrong with us?
Yeah. Yeah. What's wrong with us? I think that's going to be the theme for this era.
Yeah.
Well, I do have hope that I think once we get Trump out of politics and the MAGA extremists out, I think there will be, because like I said before, like I've always been middle left, but when I talk to people who are middle right, I have a lot in common with them. I could really have a civil political conversation with them. We just have to go back, like, because 10, 15 years ago, none of the stuff that Trump is doing now would be acceptable. That would have been a death sentence to any politician. I mean, I can name 20 things that he's done right
So
off the
true.
top of my head.
So true.
So we just got to get back to that normal, like Bill said, civility.
Yeah.
And I think then, I think we'll be going forward, I think, and maybe get out of this. But I think, Mike, it's going to take a long time. Honestly, it's going to take decades to really fix what's going on now. Do you agree with that, or do you see a way out of this quickly?
My crystal ball is broken. I remember vividly in 2015 um, having a political consultant tell me, a very high priced political consultant, that 2016 was going to be the greatest year for national unity and the Republican vote, because they were going to nominate Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio. And this person was going to reach out to immigrants and make the country feel great again about immigration. And it was like, and this was a very high priced political consultant, telling me about, it's like, and that, Hispanic voters are going to go to the Republican Party. And then it was like the opposite, right? Like, Trump was nominated and everything like that. I think our country really only has two paths, right? If we continue with this, my guy, right or wrong, there's no sense of true right or wrong. There's literally splitting, and this type of borderline thinking. Then we are headed towards all the catastrophes that people talk about. I will know that we are down that path when there's a brawl on the House or Senate floor. I think that will be my metric, that we're headed inexorably in that direction. On the other hand, if in 2028 the people nominated are, kind of like, McCain and Obama, and it's like, oh, these are two patriots who are family men and who love the country, and they toned things down a little bit, and everybody's exhausted of the rhetoric, and like, we have a reasonably calm presidential campaign, then I'll say, hey, we've shaken this national nightmare.
Yeah.
But I just, it's so hard to predict what's going to happen 3 years from now.
Yeah, make politics boring again, right? That should be the thing. I mean, it should have been over at grab 'em by the pussy. Remember that? I mean, that should have been the end of it. But I wanted to ask you this, Mike. Because Trump has now, in both the elections, he defeated a woman who was far more qualified to run the country than he was. In fact, I think Hillary Clinton was maybe one of the most qualified people to run the country ever. In your opinion, do you think that we'll see in our lifetime a female president?
Oh, I do. I really do. I think if Nancy Pelosi had been 20 years younger, and again, I know she sparks very adamant beliefs by people, but she was so good at what she did. Just brilliant, charismatic, charisma to spare. And if she had been on the national scene now, like the 20 years ago, Nancy Pelosi, I think she'd be a great candidate, somebody like her. You look at what's happened in other countries. People told me, I happen to be of Italian heritage, and people would be like, oh, Italy's never going to elect a woman. Well, they elected Giorgia Meloni, right? Margaret Thatcher in Britain was fantastic. I mean, she was, she had things that she did that I didn't agree with, but she was a great leader, right? And you look at these countries that have elected female, chief executives, and they've defied expectations. And so I do think that will happen here in the United States. I jokingly tell my oldest daughter, who's 15, that she's going to be president someday, but I hope she's not the first female president.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a long time to wait. But but no, I do think that day will come, and it's just a matter of, again, nominating somebody who is authentic, or who people perceive to be authentic, and who's got really, really good ideas that stand apart from anybody else.
Mike, do you have any ambitions of getting back in politics, or are you done?
Oh yeah. Listen, my commitment to my wife was that I would be around for the kids to grow up, because politics. Look, I was running statewide, and I was considered the favorite to win when our third child was born, and my wife was like, well, first of all, she had a very earthy way of putting it, and she said, Mike, if you're at a fish fry in Fresno when I'm giving birth, I swear to God, I'll effing kill you. Right. And so I was like, all right, okay, I hear you. And it was a particularly open wound in our families because when our first was born, I was on the campaign trail and she kept having these like false labor things. And I was just about to get on a flight to the Capitol when she actually had the real labor. And so I almost missed the birth of our first child. And so for me, that was the biggest factor. My dad's case was the second one in pressing pause. But, you know, I will be back at some point. You know, I hear that when kids are teenagers, they don't want to hang out with you that much. So.
That's true. I can confirm that, Mike.
So I will 100% be back, and I've been very fortunate to have, you know, still some good support out there, and I like to think that I have a lot more to offer this state.
Yeah. Well, if we're out here in Pennsylvania, but if there's anything we can do to help you, Mike, we'd be certainly happy to do that.
I appreciate it, and I really, really appreciate what you do to have me on and everything that you put forth on the podcast all the time. You guys are a joy to be with, and thank you for all you do.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Really appreciate it.
We'll see you again soon.
All right, definitely. That's Enough Out of You podcast is executive produced and written by Bill Rader and Sean Kane and edited by Bill Rader. The That's Enough Out of You podcast and logo are exclusive property of Bags of Chicken, LLC. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or accounts of this podcast without the express written consent of Bags of Chicken, LLC is prohibited. So don't even try it.